For the past few weeks, I've been listening an awful lot to Elton John, and I feel compelled to do a list of what I'll call Elton John's Great Eight, his Great Eight albums. So I'll go ahead and get started. But my journey with Elton John really started in September of 1971. It was my second really big concert, my first one being Elvis at the International, July of 1969. We were there for his very first night, his comeback. Back to the night that Elton played at the Las Vegas Convention Center. Elton John had played several nights at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles, and a very young promoter, Gary Nassif, that was 4 years ahead of me at my high school, Valley High School in Las Vegas. He was a grassroots promoter, and we're so grateful for him because he promoted many, many shows in Las Vegas that us kids were able to go see with Gary promoting those shows. But he pulled Elton over. Elton evidently had 2 days off. I had to research this to refresh in my memory. It's so long ago. But the show was very, very memorable. And I'll show you the set list. It's going to be very, very close to what he performed at the Greek Theater. And the night after Las Vegas, he appeared here in Reno at the Livestock Event Center, on to San Diego. He jumped over to Japan and then back to the UK. So that was the tail end of a very, very extensive tour, September 1971. Now, onto my list. I have a couple of honorable mentions, and then I'll get into my grade 8. And first off is Caribou. Now, I'm not really going to get into a lot of the songs. I'm just going to show you a ranking here and breeze through these pretty much. But what I really like here is Pinky. I mean, the bitch is back. You know, I've heard it so many times. Not one of my favorites, never has been. Pinky is a deep track. And then Ticking, the last song on side 2, is just exceptional. And you have Dee Murray on bass, the original power trio. Nigel Olsson and Elton, you know, originally they were just a 3-piece when they started. Of course, Caleb Quaye did a lot of just wonderful guitar work early on for Elton John. And next, an album that I really somehow want to squeak into my top 8, my grade 8, and that's Friends, the soundtrack from the film, 1971. And there's some very, very good songs here. The opening track, Friends, and then Honey Roll, and then Can I Put You On, into Michelle's song, is just superb. It really is. So I love this album, and all the Paul Buckmaster orchestral arrangements are just wonderful on this album, and anything that Paul Buckmaster did on Elton's albums are just sensational. Now, here's an album that I bumped out of my grade 8, and in the 9th position is Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. Now, some might have this higher, and I did, but I listened to this 3 times, and it's a subdued album. It's very good. It's really a complete listen, but it just doesn't do it for me as my top 4 Elton albums do, as you'll see on my ranking. So this is a good one. And there's the boys in the band. So moving on to number 8 position, I have from early 1973, because 2 albums were released in 1973, 2 terrific albums. The first one being Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player. And Elderberry Wine is just so very good on this. And also Blues for Baby and Me. You know, Daniel, there's another big monster hit that is just mediocre for me. It's all right. It's Elton when he's good, he's as good as anybody. Beatles, whatever. And he can be very schlocky. Look at Crocodile Rock, right? Oh, is that on here? This is on here. Yeah, I want to forget about it. Yeah, it's here. It's Crocodile Rock. Elton just recently said he's never going to perform that song again, ever again. And a little too late, but it just goes to show, he's got a schmaltzy cheeseball side to him as well. That's okay. I'll give him a pass because he's written some of the greatest songs in popular music. I'll move on. At number 7, I have a real sleeper of an album. It's experimental. He combines a lot of genres here, very orchestral, with extended classical sections. And that is Blue Moves, and this is a sealed copy, but I've streamed this in its entirety twice in the past couple weeks. I love this album. This is just so good. Blue Moves. And at number 6, you're going to go, why isn't this higher, if not number 1 or 2, or at least 3? But it just isn't for me. This is the one that came in at the tail end in 1973. His first double album, that's Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Now, this album has so many deep cuts that are so good, absolutely. But for me, it's inconsistent. Benny and the Jets was such a huge song. I just really don't care for it. Candle in the Wind is exceptional, but I could take a pass on that every now and then, for sure. Gray Seal is what I've really been enjoying as of late because I listened to this twice in the past month to really just soak it up again. Social Disease, Harmony, Roy Rogers, The Ballad of Danny Bailey, Dirty Little Girl, Jamaica Jerk Off. Take a pass on that. I've seen that movie too. This is just a excellent album and a very clean copy for me on vinyl. So yes, at my number 6. Now number 5, I had this a little higher. I bumped it back to 5, and this is Honky Chateau. I just love this album. It just, it's right in my wheelhouse because for me, 1970, like the show I saw in late 71, 71 and 1972 are my favorite years and era for Elton John. Right before he went glam, and there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy his later albums and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and all the other ones. But here, my gosh, you have Rocket Man, you have Mona Lisas and Mad Hatters, Amy and Susie and Mellow. I love Mellow. Salvation, Slave, Hercules, great album. And the great Davy Johnston is on here. Jean-Luc Ponty plays on here as well. And of course, Nigel Olsson, Elton's longtime drummer, Dee Murray on bass, and Bernie Taupin, Elton John and Bernie Taupin, one of the greatest songwriting teams in all of popular music ever. Now, at my number 4, I have, now in the States we call it 11-17-70, but this is my UK pressing. This is on Pickwick, and we just loved this album as kids. And I still do. And of course, this is when they were a power trio. There was just Dee Murray, Nigel Olsson, and Elton. And you have Take Me to the Pilot, Honky Tonk Woman, 60 Years On, Can I Put You On, Bad Side of the Moon on the B-side, and Burn Down the Mission, Into My Baby Left Me, and Get Back. So there is Sir Elton John. And moving on, my number 3, I had this at number 2, but I put it at number 3 because I had to do a flip-flop here, and I'm glad I did. This is the album here in the U.S. that so many of us just fell in love with Elton John's music. And as a 13-year-old kid, hearing your song for the first time, you had all the other bands, all the other music, and then you had this record. And this was such an important record. My sister owned this one, and I used to grab it and I'd spin it over and over. 60 Years On, Take Me to the Pilot, I Need You to Turn To. This is just such a great album. The Cage, The King Must Die, Border Song is on here. And I did say 60 Years On. and Paul Buckmaster orchestrating this wonderful album. And of course, that is not his debut. You know, Empty Sky and Skyline Pigeon is so great off of Empty Sky. I don't have that on vinyl. And I do want to mention some of the other albums that didn't make the cut were Captain and the Kid, good album. Peachtree Road, Made in England, very good. Too Low for Zero, A Single Man is good. And of course, I just mentioned Empty Sky. Rock of the Westies, really, for me, it's around number 10 or 11 in a ranking, or even a little higher. I really do like that album. But the one later album I really like, and I'd squeeze it in my grade 8, would be Songs from the West Coast. And The Emperor's New Clothes, the opening track, is just terrific. It really is. So I'm going to move on to my number 2 album in my ranking. And guys, that is Madman Across the Water. And I said recently in a video, this A-side is one of the strongest A-sides in all of popular rock music. It really, really is. Tiny Dancer, Into Levon, probably my favorite Elton song. Razorface, finishing the A-side with Madman Across the Water. The B-side are a lot of deep tracks, just the whole thing. I want to jump to Rotten Peaches. This is a tune that I'm thinking, this is a song that wants to be Tiny Dancer, one of the great songs, but doesn't quite do it. But then the more you listen to it, it's really an excellent, well-crafted song. But here you have Holiday Inn, my favorite song of the B-side, All the Nasties, and The Goodbye. I mean, this is just a wonderful album. It really, really is. And what I love about the early era is Elton was clearly listening to music from Big Pink and the band. And, you know, being a West Coast kid, the West Coast sound was so prevalent that him doing all of this type of country rock, West Coast laid-back tinged music with the motif of the Old West and all that was just too cool, and we soaked it up and we loved it. So for my number 1, it's pretty obvious. To me, this is a perfect record, and that is Tumbleweed Connection, Elton John, right from the Leslie Duncan cover of Love Song. The very first note to the last is just a wonderful, wonderful album. Country Comfort. And I don't know, have you ever heard Keith Urban cover Country Comfort? Oh my gosh, wonderful job. But we have Ballad of a Well-Known Gun, Come Down in Time, Country Comfort, Son of Your Father, My Father's Gun, Where To Now, St. Peter. There we go, Love Song, the Leslie Duncan penned tune. Amarina, I love that one. Talking Old Soldiers, and finishing with Burn Down the Mission, rather. Just a great album, a perfect album in my opinion, a 5.0. And thanks for sticking with me on my ranking, my grade 8 Elton John albums, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.